Is this the exact moment when Ferrari ceases to be a promise and becomes real threat? What tell us the practices of the GP of Great Britain 2025 about the immediate future of the most emblematic team of Formula One? After a seasonal start full of doubts, especially for the disconnection between what was promised in pre-season and the results obtained in the first races, the attention was put on how SF25 would respond in one of the most technical and demanding paths of the calendar. The most shocking fact was Lewis Hamilton's leadership in FP1, with a time of 1:26,892. But this record should not be interpreted only as an isolated good return, but as the culmination of a full day in which the British pilot showed an advanced adaptation to the car. This performance is doubly significant. First, because it is his first graduation at home as a Ferrari pilot, with all the emotional and media pressure that this implies. And second, because it is the first time in the entire season that heads a training session, which suggests that the technical improvements of the car are aligning with their pilot style. This is where the real effects of the modifications introduced in Austria begin to see. These improvements were not minor. It was a complete redesign of the car, which included adjustments in the deflectors, edges, central body and diffuser. This new aerodynamic package was implemented early, a high-risk movement that reflects the urgency of the team to reverse its situation. The objective of this redesign was not simply to increase the aerodynamic load, but to do it in a controlled way, expanding the car operating window. This means that the SF25 now tolerates better variations in the height with respect to the ground and presents less oscillations in rapid curves, which translates into a more predictable platform and therefore more exploitable by the pilots. The session also allowed us to observe Charles Leclerc ended fourth, just 0.2 from Hamilton. This data underlines another critical point: the alignment of performance between the two pilots, which until then had been uneven. Leclerc, who has historically been faster in classification than in long tanda, also found stable behavior that allowed him to stay close to his partner's rhythm. This reinforces the hypothesis that we are not facing a circumstantial result, but before a structural improvement of the car. Another technical aspect to consider is that Silverstone is not a favorable circuit for improvisations. High-speed curves such as Copse, Maggots and Beckett's demand a perfect balance between mechanical and aerodynamic grip. The fact that Ferrari has placed both pilots in the first 4 positions without showing signs of degradation or equilibrium problems suggests that the new soil is providing a solid base on which fine details can be adjusted without compromising the set. This is a significant change with respect to previous careers, where small modifications led to disproportionate consequences in the behavior of the car. The second free training session, the FP2, was the scenario where doubts were definitely dissipated about whether the performance shown by Ferrari in the FP1 had simply been the product of a good batch with low fuel load or favorable conditions. What happened in this second practice was even more revealing. Far from losing strength or backing positions, the Scuderia consolidated its level and confirmed that its competitiveness in Silverstone had a robust technical base. This session was not simply a repetition of the good morning rhythm. It was the deep validation that the SF25 is beginning to behave as a reference car in long batches, changing conditions and high aerodynamic demands. Lando Norris took the best time in this second session with a 1:25,816, lowering more than a second compared to FP1. However, behind that number there is a nuance that changes the reading completely. Charles Leclerc was second and Lewis Hamilton third, completing a high-level trident in which Ferrari had a leading participation, not as a surprise, but as a stable part of the leading group. This consistency between both practices is very rare in a Formula One so sensitive to climate, traffic on the track, the type of tire and at the level of load used. The conclusion is clear. The SF25 has found a performance platform that no longer oscillates dangerously between extremes, but offers confidence to its pilots throughout the day. Beyond the positions, the relevant was how the car behaved. High-speed curves, especially the Maggots-Beckett-Chapel complex, where aerodynamics mandates, were raffled by the Ferrari with stability that had not been seen so far in the season. Team engineers reported that car's behavior was much more predictable, even in more evolved track conditions, which indicates that simulation work, both in wind tunnel and CFD, has finally been accurately transferred to the Real circuit. This is something that Ferrari has pursued for years, closing the gap between theory and practice, and in Silverstone, finally, that convergence seems to have occurred. A key detail was the car's response to the different tire compounds. While some teams showed significant performance falls by alternating between means and soft, the Ferrari maintained a competitive rhythm regardless of the rubber used. This suggests that the aerodynamic load generated by the new soil not only improves the passage by curve, but also reduces thermal stress in the tires, allowing more progressive degradation and greater tolerance to overheating in the most demanding curves. It is a cumulative effect that multiplies the return of the return car. Another technical element that caught the attention was the behavior of the car in situations of traffic and dirty air. Historically, the SF25 and its predecessors suffered when they rolled behind other cars, losing aerodynamic load and becoming unstable in medium and high-speed curves. However, in FP2 it was observed that both Hamilton and Leclerc could maintain their lines without losing the balance of the car, which shows an improvement in global aerodynamic efficiency. This is not only a good sign for long batches, but also for career conditions, where this quality can be the difference between advancing or getting caught for hole. What Ferrari achieved in FP2 was not simply a statistical confirmation, but a technical claim. He validated that the work done in Maranello is not limited to the theory or to the specific performance. He showed that the car can respond well in consecutive sessions, under different track temperatures and with different set-up programs. Silverstone thus became the ideal showcase to reveal that the Ferrari SF25, with its aerodynamic updates, has entered a new phase of competitive maturity. And if that trend continues in the classification and race, we could be seeing not only a specific improvement, but the consolidation of Ferrari as a main actor in the fight for the podiums in the second half of the season. This component, which was originally scheduled to debut precisely in Silverstone, has been strategically delayed. And this delay is not coincidence or disorganization. Ferrari has decided to postpone its implementation to perform thorough tests in a controlled environment, far from the pressure of the career calendar. The decision has been to prove the suspension in a filming day in Mugello during the month of July, where they can collect aerodynamic and behavioral data without the obligation to compete or expose the system to the requirement of an official session. This caution, far from being a symptom of doubt, demonstrates a technical maturity by the team, which for the first time in a long time seems to be prioritizing precision above the media calendar. But why is this rear suspension so important? In simple terms, because it represents one of the largest bottlenecks in the performance of the SF25. Throughout the season, and especially in circuits where the car must maintain traction in slow curve outings or during rapid direction changes, the current configuration has demonstrated structural limitations. The car tends to become nervous, losing traction in key moments, which forces pilots to lift their foot from the accelerator and, consequently, lose precious tenths in each lap. The new suspension has been designed with the aim of improving not only traction, but also the dynamic behavior of the car in long curves and in transition between support. This has direct implications both in the wear and tear of tires and in the stability of the low braking car. And it is precisely in these scenarios where Ferrari has been vulnerable against teams such as McLaren and Mercedes. When integrating this new system, the SF25 is expected to have a more predictable rear train, capable of supporting greater load without compromising the balance of the set. Another aspect that turns this update into a critical opportunity is its indirect impact on the aerodynamics of the car. The rear suspension does not act in isolation. Its geometry and operation influence the airflow that reaches the diffuser, a vital area for the generation of aerodynamic load. In other words, an optimized suspension not only improves the mechanics of the car, but potentially amplifies the soil and efficiency of the diffuser, which could unlock even more performance in the global aerodynamic set of the SF25. Having not introduced it in Silverstone, Ferrari has played a double letter. On the one hand, he did not risk his good moment with a piece not yet verified. On the other, it has left room for a future significant improvement that could arrive just at the most critical moment of the championship, when the points begin to have decisive weight and the mid-season updates make the difference between gaining races and simply survive. Traditionally, Ferrari has been indicated for hurrying to introduce components that were not at all proven, with results that often ended up compromising complete races. On this occasion, however, logic is different. It does not matter to be the first, but to be the most precise. And if the rear suspension meets what is projected in simulations and bank test, the second half of the season could see a Ferrari not only competitive, but fully capable of playing victories without depending on external circumstances. Therefore, what Ferrari has in the bedroom is much more than a simple technical improvement. It is an opportunity to redefine your identity as a leading team. If the new soil has been the basis on which to rebuild the stability of the car, the new suspension is the component that can convert that stability into sustained yield. The weight, therefore, is not only strategic, is also an investment in the immediate future of the team. And that type of medium-term vision is exactly what Ferrari has needed for more than a decade. Hamilton's return to the front, the consistency of Leclerc, the validation of the new soil, the strategic patience with the rear suspension, everything converges in a narrative that until recently seemed fiction. Ferrari begins to behave as a modern, rigorous team with medium-term vision and competitive foundations. And that has implications not only for this race, but for the entire arch of the 2025 season. But this is where you have to participate in you. Do you think Ferrari is really ready to make the definitive leap towards the fight for the championship? Or are we simply before another mirage, another flash of hope that could fade in the next quote of the calendar? Leave your opinion in the comments.